many years now I'm engaged in macro photography. I like it a lot to shoot insects, butterflies, wasps, ants, bees, flowers, small things, making them big on sensor and catching a lot of detail, making visible what might not be visible to the naked eye. And before I come to the core topic of this video, let me just briefly share with you a few options how you can do macro photography. So this is my most classical lens on macro photography. It's calculated for full frame sensors on Canon cameras. It's a 100mm focal length. It has the widest open aperture of 2.8 and the image scale or magnification is 1:1. So you really get things big on the sensor and in full life size. And most importantly, it has image stabilization, so it will compensate to some extent for shakes and vibrations. A very nice classical lens here. Lens I used for years on the Sony Alpha series, so full frame Sony cameras is this one here. So it's also a macro lens, it's the FE mount, it has also a widest open aperture of 2.8, 90mm focal length, which is a slightly different image impression than what you get on the Canon you saw before. It's from the G series, not a G Master, but very, very sharp, very crisp, a lens I used a lot in the past. And I show you one sample of a very nice macro shot right now. For the small medium format sensors, I also have some macro lenses here. So this is an XCD lens for the Hasselblad X1D, 120mm. It's a macro lens which makes crisp and sharp images. I think it is a bit more difficult. You need to work a bit more precisely in order to get good shots with this one when compared to the Canon lens and the Sony lens you saw before. And the same applies to the 120mm macro lens here for the Fuji GFX series. This is a widest open aperture of f4, which is not astonishing because we have a bigger sensor than full frame here for the small medium format cameras. It's a very nice lens, very sharp. It also has optical image stabilization and is water, or let's call it weather resistant, so splash water and dust. Very nice lens, but also here, because the sensor is bigger and the lens is heavy, is a lot of glass which has to be moved here for focus. You need to be a bit more precise than on the Canon and Sony Alpha lenses I showed before. Here's another one which is from Sigma. That's for the Nikon full frame sensor here, so you can use this with an adapter on the C6 or C7. You can also use it on the 850D or the 810D. It's for Nikon full frame. It's a nice lens. It has a very interesting focal length here, 150mm, so you can also use this nicely for very sharp portraits. And astonishingly enough, even with 150mm, you have a widest open aperture of 2.8, which you only get on rare occasion. Also a very nice lens. I've shown so far is expensive stuff, and if people want to just experiment with macro photography, there are much cheaper ways to start with macros. And here is an example of a small camera I bought just for fun for me to play around. It's a nice piece of technology. It's very affordable. I think you can get this one because it's the tough TG5 by now for $300 to $400. There is a new one which just came out. I think it's the TG6 if I'm not mistaken. I haven't looked this up in the web, but I think I saw an advertisement. And then it's probably $50 or $100 more expensive. But this one will do the trick from the former series. And this one is waterproof. You can use this for diving. You can swim, for instance, in the Red Sea, take photos from fish and everything that's going on underwater. And it also has a macro mode, and the macro mode is equipped with an insane magnification. So they call it a microscope mode. And I'm going to show a few samples in a moment from this series here, so from the TUF series. The image quality has to be discounted a little bit, of course, because this is a 12 megapixel sensor here. And of course it uses digital magnification, but I think Olympus is doing a good job here in enabling macro photography for people who want to start this with low budget before they go and migrate into the more expensive equipment I have here on my table. Take this even further, the best camera is the camera you have with you. And most of the modern smartphones like the Samsung Galaxy S9, S10, the Plus versions of it, and what you see here, the Huawei P30 Pro, they all can be used for macro photography. And most of these lenses here, so here we have Leica lenses at the back, they can go very close for close-up shots, and you can make small things very big in the image later on. So I'm on my Huawei P30 Pro now. I'm in the normal photo mode. I enabled AI. You see this on the left-hand side with this orange symbol, artificial intelligence. And the AI recognizes if I get closer and transforms the camera in the close-up shot camera. So I demonstrate this now here. I get closer. You see on the right-hand side, it recognizes super macro. So it's all automatic here. I can get very close. I can tap on my symbol here to meter light and focus, and then I take the shot. And if you look at that, looks quite nice. So this is absolutely sufficient if you want to photograph a fly or a bee sitting on a flower somewhere when you're hiking and you don't have macro equipment with you. Your smartphone will do the trick. It's a quite nice shot. We do this a second time here. So I took off my watch. Let's get very close. Let's focus and meter light. Let's take the shot. And again, I think the quality is quite nice. You see here all the engravings in the watch, GMT Master 2, Rolex Oyster Perpetual, quite nice. Lots of detail. Will definitely do the trick if you don't have these reflections here, which I have from the window behind me. Of course, you also can do this in the more section by going directly to super macro, and there's always one message coming here because I have my screen recorder overlaying it. Ignore it for a moment. Let's go to this one here. We don't have reflections here, and in the super macro mode again you can do the shot here. You can also go into wide angle mode, and then you can get, as far as I know, even closer, and it's still sharp and in focus. So if you look at the result, quite nice. Also on the wide angle lens, very good result. You even see some dust here on the logo. So for close-up shots, if you don't want to invest in macro equipment, absolutely sufficient for beginners. If you don't want to sell your pictures, of course, then you need probably a bit more resolution and a bit more quality. I want to briefly, and as my last point before I go to the main topic of this video, I want to show one more variation of the scheme, and that's built-in macro modes in compact cameras. And I have two representatives of this species here. This is the RX1R Mark II from Sony. It's a very compact camera. If you compare it to the Leica Q2, which is one of my most favorite cameras currently, it's even smaller. It has a full frame sensor built-in and around 42 megapixels, and most importantly it has very sharp optics from Carl Zeiss. And this one has a built-in macro mode in the same way on the lens as we have it on the Leica Q2. So this is a range from 0.3 meters to infinity, and if I switch this, I have a range from 0.2 meters to 0.35 meters, which is the macro mode. I can get closer to my target and my subject and can get nice close-up shots. And also here, I'm going to show a couple of examples in a moment. And then, as just mentioned, the Leica Q2 here, a beautiful piece of photography equipment. I like it a lot. I was just using it in Sydney, where I was on a business trip, and I had one day off on Saturday to actually go to the harbor and also to Bondi Beach and take nice detailed pictures with that camera. And also here we have a built-in macro mode. So if you look at that, if I switch here, let's go back. This is the normal mode. You see the distance scale here, and if I switch to macro mode, it gives me a distance scale which is now adapted to getting closer to my subject. And also here we have nice macro capabilities. You don't get as close as if you have a magnification or image scale of 1:1 like on these lenses we had here before, but it does the trick for, you know, insects, flowers, butterflies. And it's a very versatile feature, because if you have only that camera with you and you don't want to think before you start a trip what lenses to include in your backpack, then this is all included. It's also weather sealed, which doesn't apply to the Sony RX1R Mark II, and it's dust proof. So you have in one piece of technology everything you might need for your photographic ambition. So let's get this now all away, all removed from the table, and let's do something very different. So my title says macro photography going crazy, and I want to unbox now the most crazy lens I've ever seen in my whole life, and you will witness that, and then we will have a detailed look at that new macro lens. After my brief walking through the different options you have in macro photography and also showing some samples with a few of my lenses here, I want to do something completely different today and look at the strangest, most crazy, or you could say most weird macro lens I ever looked at. And the first thing you can realize here, this is all in Chinese. So I think you can read the 2x1, you can read the LED, but that's basically it, what we can understand from that. And I think people who watch this from China, they have a big advantage here today. And then the lens is from a manufacturer called Huawei, and it's for full frame cameras. This one is for Canon full frame. It's a 24mm lens with an aperture of f14, 2x magnification. It is called the Macro Pro. So I'm going to look at this. I already saw a few reviews of this, but no serious dealing with it. I think it's an interesting lens, also very weird. You probably have a hard time, based on the shape of the lens, getting this through airport security. But let's open it up, let's see what's in the box, let's try to play a little bit with it, and let's get some impression about the most crazy lens I've ever seen, or I should say the most weird lens I've ever had in my hands. So let's get started and let's unbox this here. The package is very solid. It also looks like there is good protection inside for the lens. All right, looks like we have a bag here. Let's get that knife secured first. So here's the bag. That's actually good if you want to take it through airport security. You have it in a bag so it doesn't scare, the heck out of people when they see this. Huawei, as I said, is the manufacturer of this lens here. And if we open this up, let's see how this works. There is something to secure this lens here with some straps. Quite nice. Looks good. All right, we look at this maybe later. And then here, that looks fancy. A premium build, again, coming from China. Super premium build. It's still sealed. You can see this here, it's in plastic, so it hasn't been opened before. Also, there is some texture on the lower here. Quite nice, very well done. You can even lock this up if you're afraid someone is going to steal your most weird lens in your collection. So quite good. I think we should just open the knife again. And let's see if we can get this opened here. Let's first get the knife closed. All right. Wow, very nice, very nice. Look at that. Here's a nice hand grip. There is the logo of the manufacturer here. We have some lock mechanism here. It also has some little rubber feet here, so it stands solid on the ground and doesn't get scratches on the aluminum finish here. Quite nice. Let's see if we open this up here. Very solid, like a Rimowa suitcase. And then we have a few things inside here. All right, this is not standing firm. Let's close it up. So first of all, this almost reminds me in Leica here, quality control. There is a serial number here. It's not a large serial number, so it don't seem that they make a lot of units here. And there is also some, it's like some stamp here, showing quality controls. Quite nice. And then we have here the little brochure. New idea, new fun. Nice. Some description for the lens, that's how it looks like. A lot of Chinese inside, 2x macro actually looks quite promising. As I said before, in the first part of the video, most macro lenses have, at highest or at maximum a magnification ratio of 1:1. And here we can go up to 2:1, which gives 2x magnification, so should probably get nice detailed pictures of small items getting close and big on the sensor. Quite nice here. So we keep this aside. Let's look into this again. So here's a USB cable. We'll find out what that is good for. Here is a logo with a certificate from the manufacturer, Anhui Chang'an Optics Technology, and again some stamp showing that they have strict quality controls. We'll find out how we like the build quality and everything of the lens in a moment. And there's something else here. So this is a cable. Let's dig deeper into this later, but it has some buttons here and we'll look into that later. And here is the lens. There's nothing else in the box, I guess. Or here's a little paper. We can look at this later. Okay. So here's the lens. Nicely wrapped. Good stuff. Fully sealed here. You can probably get this open by pulling up here. All right, I think we got it. Wow, look at that piece of technology here. So let's have a closer look at the lens now. Clearly, this is an EF mount from Canon. People who are familiar with Canon cameras, they recognize this. It has, the name on it, Laowa. Here is the lens where you go close to your target and subject. Let's get this into focus. And you also see a circle of small LED lights arranged around the lens. So that's quite nice and should help you enlighten your subject. So even with these fairly well closed apertures starting at f14, you might catch enough light to get a good shot. Let's close this up, by the way. Look at this tiny little lens hood here. It's good for your finger. It's pretty interesting. All right. There are not much things here how to operate the lens. So there is a focus ring here. It says infinity, which means you could basically use this for 24mm wide angle landscape shooting, which sounds a little bit crazy to me. I don't think someone would seriously consider this lens for 24mm landscape shooting, but anyway. And then you can turn the focus ring here and you have the magnification scale and also the distance scale. And don't be misled. I mean, if we go here now to 1 to 2, 1 to 1.5, 1:1, as I said, that's the maximum you get on most macro lenses. I know only one macro lens from Canon where you can go up to 5 to 1, which is a very, very special lens. And then you have 1.5 to 1 and 2 to 1. And here the distance scale is in meters. So here it says meters. And since the lens is very long, this is, let's get this closer, this is 45.8 centimeters. But since the lens is so long and the distance is always measured to the sensor plane, this means you can go as close as 2 centimeters to your target and subject, which is very, very close. All right. On the aperture ring, which is the second ring we have here, it starts at f14. So that's the widest open aperture you have on that lens. And this is not unusual for wide angle macro lenses, but in general, a wide angle macro lens is anyway more the rare concept compared to, let's say, 50mm, 90mm, 105mm or 120mm. And then you can go up to f16, 22, 32, 40. And that immediately explains why Laowa built in these little LEDs here, so that you have chance to at least catch some light and get some quality on the sensor through that lens here. Let's make some space now here. So let's get the suitcase out of the way. Let's position the lens here and let's look at that stuff we have here. I think that little piece of paper we didn't pay attention to so far. Let's see what it says. That is just how to adjust actually your locking combination here for the locks on the suitcase. It's okay. We deal with that later. I'm not afraid anyway that someone is going to steal that lens from me, because most people on planet Earth will not know what to do with that. What I have in addition here with me is the camera where I want to host this lens here. And that is the EOS R. It's a nice camera. It's a mirrorless camera with a full frame sensor, has 30 megapixels of resolution. It's very good on high ISO, a very good camera, has good video capabilities. Worked a lot with that camera, in particular when I was in Abu Dhabi. And I think this is a nice camera to try this out. There is already a macro lens on that camera. It's the Canon 35mm. So if you look at that, it's actually not inside, it's outside. Let's see if I can show you. So this is an RF lens, 35mm, f1.8 macro. Image stabilization, and here is the focus mechanism STM, which is typical for Canon. Okay, that's the camera we want to use to try this out. Okay, so let's get the lens off here. What we will need is the adapter. So it needs an adapter to go from the EF mount to the RF mount, and that is something which we are going to use now here. So let's open this up. Let's look at the camera. Let's get this mounted until it clicks, solid. And now here we have the EF mount. So let's get this lens here unplugged. Let's get this on here. And it clicks. Et voila. I tried to get this distance so you see the craziness of this lens on the Canon EOS R. I'm quite impressed. It really looks like you want to shoot someone. Pretty impressive. But all that counts, of course, is the image quality of that lens and what we can do with it. So let's get this here closed up. Sorry, I think this is this one here. So that prevents dust and dirt. This one we get away. Now let's look at the additional equipment we have here. This is also firmly sealed. I don't even think I get this unsealed with my bare fingers. So let's have a look here. It's do this quickly with the sharp knife. Okay, so this is a cable. It has a connector. My guess is this fits into here. So here should be a slot where this fits in. Sorry. First time operation with the new lens. Yeah, nice, sits firm. So this is an interesting connector, but I think it is, let me get this a little bit sorted out here. I think it is matching or fitting into USB ports. And I have a little power pack here, so real power. It's fully charged. I think you can see this here. Let's try to get this in, and it fits nicely. Okay, let's power this up. So it should be on now. Let's get the lens hood removed. And now we have this control button here, and you see here it's already blue. So if I switch this on, the lens is fully enlightened with these little LEDs. Quite nice. It seems I can also dim this here. Here you can see now the structure of the lenses. Let's get this into focus. And I can switch it off. Let's see if it remembers the position we had. Yes, and then I can beam this up all to the maximum strength, which becomes very, very bright. It's actually very, very bright. Okay, good. Looks good. Let's switch this off. I think we understood that mechanism. What I find not really useful or practical is that you have this just in your hand, or you place it somewhere and there is nothing where you can basically mount it on your camera so that your hands are free and you don't have something somewhere lying on the side. So that's not very good. I think in the next edition, next version of this crazy lens, I would recommend to the manufacturer to provide some mechanism to mount this on the lens and hopefully also provide the battery right in the box. I'm going to clean up that space now here to get a clean table, and then we are trying to do some first testing here with that macro lens, and let's see then what the results are. So what we're going to do now is we mounted the lens on the camera. We have a little Raspberry Pi computer here. I want to try to get very close and then do some video shooting here, and let's see how this works. Okay, we start with a 1:4 magnification ratio. I actually can just choosing my distance here and see how close I can get. We can get closer, then it gets no longer sharp here, but now it gets sharp. Actually, the focus ring is quite smooth. It works quite nice. So let's see if we systematically beam this up. I'm now at 1 to 1.5. I can get even closer, I think. Wow, this is quite interesting. Let's look at that here. Very good magnification, actually. Let's screen for something different here. And I think if we go up to 2 to 1, we need to go even closer. It's almost on the motherboard now here. And now you see what the LED would be good for, because you have no more light here. All right. Okay, I think I try this again by switching the light on, and let's see what we get then. Okay, let's try to get this mounted here. USB cable. Let's mount this on that little power pack here. Very good. That's already powered on. Let's get this out of the way. And let's see if we look into the lens here. Powered on. Oh, now it gets very, very bright, of course. Let's zoom this correctly. This is too bright. So let's get this reduced here. Much better. It provides me some reflections of the LEDs on that motherboard here, of course, which is not coming as a big surprise to me. So let's get this very close. It is a very sharp lens.